A peaceful swim turned into a desperate fight for survival when a woman, swept away by the current, found herself drowning. But could her screams for help reach anyone in the vast wilderness? Or would a bear hear her cries and do the unthinkable? Sarah Matthews, a 32-year-old wildlife photographer from Seattle, had always felt most at home at nature's embrace. With her trusty camera and a backpack full of supplies, she embarked on what was supposed to be a rejuvenating week-long solo trek through Alaska's Denali National Park. As the sun began to dip below the tree line, Sarah decided to make camp for the night near a babbling stream. Kneeling by the water's edge to refill her bottles, Sarah spotted a flat rock just a few feet into the stream. In a split second, her decision to step onto it changed everything. Sarah's eyes widened in shock as she felt her foot slide out from under her, and she plunged into the icy water. Panic surged through her as she was pulled under, the weight of her backpack threatening to drag her deeper. When she finally managed to gasp a breath, the reality of her situation hit her harder than the freezing water. The shore was already alarmingly far away. As the stream carried her further into the wilderness, Sarah's mind raced with terrifying thoughts. Her years of outdoor experience seemed useless in the face of nature's raw power. Sarah tried to recall her wilderness survival training, fighting to stay calm despite the growing fear in her chest. She knew hypothermia was a real threat, and every second in the water decreased her chances of survival. "Help! Somebody please!" Sarah screamed. She knew the chances of anyone hearing her were slim, but instinct drove her to keep calling out. With desperate determination, she angled her body, using what little strength she had left to swim towards it. The current fought against her, but Sarah pushed on, her fingers finally grazing the rough bark of the log. Clinging to this temporary lifeline, Sarah caught her breath and assessed her situation. She was alive but still in grave danger, trapped in the middle of the rushing river. Looking around, Sarah tried to get her bearings. She was alone in the vast Alaskan wilderness, being carried further from her campsite with each passing moment, and night was falling fast. "Think, Sarah, think," she muttered through chattering teeth. Her only option was to scream at the top of her lungs and hope the heavens heard her cry. But before she could do that, a sound cut through her thoughts, a sharp wooden crack that seemed to reverberate through her very bones. Sarah's eyes widened in horror as she realized its source. Hairline fractures were spreading across the log's surface, the wood groaning under the relentless assault of the current. "No," Sarah whispered, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. The log that had been her salvation was now betraying her, splintering before her eyes. With another sickening crack, a large chunk of the log tore away, disappearing into the churning water. Sarah's precarious perch shifted violently, nearly throwing her back into the icy current. She scrambled to maintain her grip, her numb fingers scrabbling against the rough bark. "Help!" she screamed into the twilight, knowing it was futile but unable to stop herself. Just then, it seemed the heavens heard her cry. A group of hikers had been making their way along the riverbank when they suddenly heard a desperate cry for help. Startled, they quickened their pace, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and adrenaline. "Please," she cried out, but it was too late. With a final sickening snap, the branch broke apart, plunging her back into the icy embrace of the river. She kicked weakly, trying to break the surface, but her limbs felt like lead. The current pulled at her, tumbling her over and over. She gasped, choking and spluttering, fighting to keep afloat. As they neared the water's edge, the hikers could see a figure struggling against the powerful current of the river. It was a woman, her arms flailing as she fought to stay afloat, her cries for help barely audible over the roar of the waves. Without hesitation, they rushed to the riverbank, their eyes scanning the water in search of a way to reach the drowning woman. One of the hikers, a former lifeguard, quickly assessed the situation and began barking out orders. "We need to find something to throw out to her. A rope, a branch, anything that can help her grab on," he shouted, his voice laced with urgency. The other hikers sprang into action, scouring the area for any suitable objects that could aid in the rescue. They tore branches from nearby trees, tied them together with their belts and shoelaces, and hurled them out towards Sarah. But the raging current swept them away before she could reach them. "It's no good," the lifeguard yelled in frustration. "The water's moving too fast, and she's too far out. We need to find another way to get to her." The hikers scanned the riverbank, desperately searching for a safer crossing point or a way to get closer to her. But the terrain was treacherous, with slippery rocks and steep embankments that made it nearly impossible to venture into the water without risking their own safety. Undeterred, the hikers continued to shout encouragement to Sarah, urging her to hold on and not give up. As the hikers stood helplessly on the shore, their eyes fixed on the desperate struggle unfolding in the river, one of them suddenly caught a glimpse of movement in the trees. "It's a bear." The others whipped their heads around, their eyes widening as they spotted the massive brown bear emerging from the forest, its dark eyes fixed intently on the drowning woman. "Oh my God, no!" one of the women gasped, her hands flying to her mouth in horror. "It's going to attack her." The hikers watched in a paralyzed state of fear as the bear began to make its way toward the water's edge, its powerful strides cutting through the underbrush with ease. They knew the reputation of these bears, their strength and ferocity, and the thought of one of these creatures confronting the already imperiled Sarah was almost too much to bear. The bear reached the water's edge and plunged into the river. The group watched with bated breath as the bear swiftly closed the distance between itself and the struggling woman. As the massive bear drew closer, Sarah's heart raced with unbridled terror. All she could think about was the bear's fearsome reputation and the possibility of being torn apart by its powerful jaws. "No, stay back," she screamed, her voice hoarse and desperate. "Please, don't hurt me." Sarah thrashed wildly in the water. The sheer panic coursing through her body made it nearly impossible to think clearly. When the bear finally reached her and grasped the collar of her jacket in its mouth, she let out a blood-curdling scream. She kicked and clawed at the bear, her nails scratching frantically at its muzzle. "Let me go. Leave me alone," she cried. The hikers on the shore watched in horror. As the bear reached the shore and gently deposited her on the ground, her fear did not subside. She scrambled backward, her eyes darting around frantically, unsure of the bear's intentions. "Stay away from me," she cried. "Don't come any closer." Sarah's body was racked with tremors, and she could feel her heart pounding in her ears as she waited, terrified, for the bear to make its next move. Her mind raced with the horrific possibilities of what the massive creature might do to her. But without a sound, the bear turned and disappeared back into the forest, leaving the shaken but relieved hikers to tend to the still terrified Sarah and marvel at the incredible yet harrowing rescue they had just witnessed. The hikers stood in stunned silence, their minds struggling to comprehend what had just transpired. They had heard stories of animal heroism, but this was something truly extraordinary. A bear, a creature so often feared and misunderstood, had risked its own life to save a human in distress.